Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ann Diaz, and I'm the Business Central Practice Director at Turnkey Technologies. I'll just say a little bit about me. I've spent 20 plus years supporting the Dynamics products as a consultant for SL, GP, and NAV and Business Central, also as a project manager for all of these products, and as a practice director. I've worked across the channel in many different capacities, including some years at Microsoft. I was a consultant where I handled hot site implementations. That was a fun job. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about Business Central today. I'm going to move through my slides, and Zach, if you'll just give me a heads up if it doesn't advance the way that I'm expecting it to. I am going to go through the agenda next. Our agenda will include an introduction to Business Central, and we'll also talk about the technology platform. We'll go through ISVs and integrations. I'm going to give you a look at the implementation roadmap for Business Central. We'll talk about what happens with your very important data, and we'll conclude with how to get started with a migration. Let's start with an overview of what Business Central is all about. Business Central is an ERP software for small to mid-sized companies, domestically or operating globally. So actually, it's fairly similar to what Dynamics GP is for, and Jason just mentioned that same type of business. BC has 80 language localizations, and it's available in 16 countries. It can operate in multiple currencies and tax regions. It's multi-company enabled, which means that you can have multiple entities created within the same tenant. There's no specified limit. And BC is very scalable. In fact, the minimum number of users is 1. You can have 1 user all the way up to 100 plus users in Business Central. The industries that we typically see Business Central applied toward are financial services, professional services, distribution and trade, and manufacturing. You can easily add functionality that pertains to your operation or the region that you're operating in, and you can customize the system to support, highly specialized industries or needs. I'm going to look at the core capabilities next. Down the left side are the module areas, and the rows show functionality by module. So we have financial management, accounts receivable and payables, general ledger, bank and cash management, and fixed assets management. Those are your core finance modules. Then we have sales and service management. That's generating quotes, sales orders, managing all your contacts. Business Central has a light CRM component built right within it, and so it can handle creating opportunities, activity tracking against those, all the contacts that go along with managing your sales activities. And then of course on the back end side, the back office side of that, we have invoicing and payment processing. There is a project accounting module within Business Central, and that can be used strictly for capturing jobs on internal projects, or it can be used for budgeting, estimating, calculating WIP, calculating revenue, and billing customers for customer type jobs. It has a resource management component built right into it as well. There is a supply chain management suite, which includes inventory, procurement, sales orders and fulfillment, handling customer and vendor returns, and all the vendor management activities. Operations management is for manufacturing. You can do full MRP, CRP, production orders, bill of materials, of course, warehouse management, all contained within the operations management suite. And then there is reporting and analytics built right into Business Central for customer insights. You have self-serve reports, out-of-the-box dashboards, and lots of built-in intelligence. There's just an asterisk at the bottom noting that the service order management and manufacturing modules are part of the premium licensing. We'll talk a little bit about licensing here in a second. So I thought it would be nice to actually see Business Central. We're talking about what does it look like. Well, this is officially what it looks like, literally what it looks like. This is just a snapshot of the home screen, which is based on Role Center. So there are many Role Centers that are applied out of the box, and it gives you access to the right screens and reports and queues to quickly get around and get what you need to see. It's a web-based application, so you can access it from any device that can connect to the internet. And of course, we can't see it all today. There's much to explore within Business Central. So why cloud? Business Central can be deployed on-premise, but it's intended for the cloud. There are many benefits to being in the cloud. Just a few of them would be no hardware or infrastructure administration. Within the cloud, you've got built-in backups and disaster recovery. You've got a tight integration to other cloud products. Many products are in the cloud today. Office 365 is one example of that. Accessibility, easy to access. I mentioned that you can access it from anywhere where you can connect to the internet and on any device. It's optimized for mobile devices as well as PCs. And automatic updates and upgrades. So twice a year, Microsoft releases 2 major updates to Business Central, which are automatically applied to the tenants. You do have controls over that, of course, so you can determine when and how it is applied, but those are automatic and they're part of your subscription. This slide shows the Business Central technology stack, where it fits into the Microsoft ecospace. And I thought this was important to take a look at because there's just many parts and pieces that all fit together here. So you have your application platform, which is also called the Power Platform, also called the Microsoft Dataverse. It's had many names along the way, but what that is this allows all the applications to connect through a common model. This is where you have Power BI and other Power Apps that can reach out and connect and pull all of these sources of data together so that you can view your data and analyze your data in the way that you need to. Office 365 is a cloud-based suite of apps, including Outlook for email, Word, Excel. Those are all part of this ecospace. There are several tools that are here as well. So we've got Power BI for data analysis. We've got Cortana, which is a fully integrated analytic platform tool. We've got Azure IoT. This is the Azure Internet of Things. It's a collection of Microsoft managed cloud services that you use to connect, to monitor, and control all your assets. And it's made up of devices that communicate with one or more back-end services that are hosted in the cloud. Microsoft Business Central is here in the center. This is an ERP full-service integrated software. This is what our discussion is focusing on today, and we just talked about the core capabilities which are in the circle around that piece of the slide. And this is all wrapped up in the Microsoft Azure cloud, which is a nice way to think of the cloud, really. So while we're talking about the technology stack, I thought it was a good idea to also understand the licensing for Business Central. It's named user licenses with team users for those folks just accessing to view records or approve workflows, for example. And then the Essentials licenses is for the full users. The Essentials license includes all the finance modules, sales, procurement, distribution, inventory, assembly management, and project accounting. So you get a lot for that Essentials license. The premium licenses add two main components. So in addition to everything in Essentials, you have service management and manufacturing with full production capabilities. So I'm sure a lot of you use ISV products and they've become very important to your Dynamics GP system. Many of those are available for Dynamics BC as well. A lot of them have matured over time and provide that same functionality or even enhanced functionality within BC. So we have binary streams, multi-entity management. We've got Avalara's Avatax, SPS Commerce for EDI, Insight software for JET reports. FYISoft is another financial reporting tool. It's somewhat similar to Management Reporter and FRX, but it's in the cloud. And then Solver is also a budgeting and forecasting tool. Notice Technologies has a nice product for credit card processing, Integrity Data for payroll, and then AvidXchange for AP automation. So those may be some of the ones you've used or heard of in the GP world, and you also would be having access to them and using them in the BC world if those were things that you needed. There's some new favorites as well for Business Central. InsightWorks has some great additions for warehouse management. They have their Warehouse Insight product for handheld scanning and license plating, and they have their Dynamic Ship product for a shipping integration with common carriers. And then ZetaDocs for expense management. And that, grouping of ISVs is really quite large. Those are just a few that I know have worked with many times. There's also an out-of-the-box integration between Dynamics 365 for Sales, also known as CRM, and Business Central. So all of the records that are shown here can sync across the two applications bidirectionally. And so I listed this to show what the system is, which system is currently the system of record for each data type. So usually folks will enter their new accounts in Dynamics 365 for Sales. That will sync then to Business Central. Just note that it can go the other way if you'd prefer to. Have the customer set up in Business Central first and sync back. They can do that. All your contact management can be handled in the same way. You can open opportunities in D365 and keep track of all that activity. From there, you can generate quotes, and once they're approved, you can convert them to a sales order, which would then pass back over into Business Central for the invoicing side and payment collection. All of the components that you see here in terms of sales prices, customers, items, all of those things sync between so that the salespeople have access to all the data that they need when they're working with their customers and producing quotes and analyzing data. So I'd like to share next an implementation roadmap. A migration is essentially an implementation because of all the pieces involved. Not everyone is going to include every piece that you see here, but I thought it would be good to show a look at how we would do the implementation of Business Central, how long it takes, and a look at how much it costs. So essentially a roadmap for Business Central's implementation. This is the methodology that we are using, and we follow this on all of our projects to ensure success, really, to make sure that we are from start to finish involving enough analysis and design to map out your processes and data and providing you with plenty of training and testing support, plus go-live support. We start with an analysis of what you're currently doing. You may have been on GP for a long time, and you may want to, take a look at some of the areas where you know what you need to do, you know what your processes are, but there are some enhancements that you'd like to make or some efficiencies you'd like to bring into play, or you just like to change the process altogether and look for a best practice. So that's what the analysis component helps us to do is gather that information, understand those processes, and look for any areas of pain that we need to resolve or places that we need to enhance. So through those analysis workshops, we're able to prepare a fit gap analysis, show you what fits right out of the box. If there are any gaps, a gap could be something like a custom report. It could be something like an integration to another application. It could be a process where we need to change the workflow behind the scenes. And we provide that solution strategy to you and help you understand what your future state looks like in that analysis phase. In the design phase, what we do is set up a sandbox environment so that you can, we'd like to get you into the system early and often. The more that you're part of the process, the more that you're going to learn the system inside and out and feel comfortable that you understand the solution and that you will be a successful user. So we do standard configuration in that sandbox environment. We load your master data, so your customers, your chart of accounts, your vendors, your items, or a subset of them. Either way, what we want to do is when we present the conference room pilot number 1, we want to be able to have you familiar with the data that's in there and see how all of the processes are flowing together so that we can confirm and validate that we have configured the system correctly. In development, what we're working on there is gaps. So again, the gaps could be something like a report, an integration, a modification of a process workflow, setting up custom workflows, things of that nature. So we develop those gaps, develop the solutions, we test them, and then we are doing training workshops during this time as well. This is where you really are getting into the system, learning small bits at a time so that you can apply it to your end-to-end processes as we go. We also configure security at this point, test that, and prepare a user training plan for all of the end users. Deployment is where we are doing our conference room pilot number 2. So we drive conference room pilot number 1. You drive conference room pilot number 2, and with our support. You're showing us here that you've been able to test all of your end-to-end processes, your procure to pay, your order to cash, that we've got the security set up correctly, that any integrations that we've created are functioning as designed and as expected. And we then begin to make our cutover planning decisions, our cutover checklists, and get the environment ready for that cutover. And our final step is to extract data from GP, prepare it for cutover. That would be data like your OpenAR, OpenAP, your general ledger balances. And we load that into the production company in Business Central, and then we go live and we provide support during the operation phase to help you get to a stabilized place. And of course, we continue to provide ongoing support after the fact as well. This is a sample timeline for a project which assumes a full implementation of, assumes the full implementation of the finance and supply chain modules. So it shows a 6-month implementation. Project management is throughout, and then it goes down through those elements I just shared with you on the implementation methodology. So we start with analysis, we move into design, we go into development, we go into deployment, and then we go into operation. Kind of steps you down through the same path that we took. And of course, there are certain pieces in here that are our critical path, the conference room pilot number 1, the user training conference room pilot number 2, and go live readiness. This timeline would change depending on the scope of your project. If you did not have all these modules that are in the finance and distribution suite, and you were just looking to go live with general ledger and accounts payable, of course the timeline would be shorter, and there wouldn't be a need for, likely there wouldn't be a need for gaps because you would have a smaller scope that we would be looking at. I wanted to talk a little bit about budget as well. So this one it's hard to make an estimate that kind of fits all. There's a lot of different criteria that would go into that depending on number of modules that you're using, how much data we're dealing with, how many different entities we're talking about. So what I tried to do here is display a range of budgets that would apply to the finance section, which would be your GL, AP, AR, cash, and fixed assets module. That would start somewhere around 150 hours to potentially 400 hours. If you were doing a finance plus distribution migration, so distribution being inventory, sales orders, and purchase orders, then it would be somewhere from 400 to 800 hours. And then if you were adding additional components such as manufacturing into the mix, that would be from 800 hours plus. And of course, we didn't talk here about project accounting. We didn't talk about service management, but those would fit in here as well. It kind of depends on the type of business you are and the scope, the type of business processes that you need to include. Hopefully this gives you an idea of what that might look like. Let's talk about your GP data and what happens to it with a migration. We know this is very important. One thing that it's important to note is that this is a good opportunity to clean or restructure your master data. Maybe you've been wanting to streamline the chart of accounts. This is a great time to do that. Maybe you want to clean up vendors and customers that you haven't had any activity with for some time. Maybe your items need to be cleaned up, and this is the time to do that. You also want to consider how much historical data is really needed. You know, do you want to have all of the history from the beginning of time? Are you really going to look at it? You know, the data migration task is a huge part of any implementation. So we want to advise you on you know, the best paths here. There are several migration tools available. There's Rapid Start, which is a tool within Business Central that allows you to create templates that you use to load your legacy data into, and they're formatted in the way that they can be brought into Business Central. There's also a tool from Microsoft. It's a GP to BC migration tool, and what it does is the set of data points listed under number 4. It takes the data that you have in GP and migrates that to Business Central into those same entities. Still means you can take that opportunity to clean your data. You know, that's one of the reasons why you may want to choose the Rapid Start tool, because you have then a template in front of you of what data you need and how to format it, and you can pull the data out of GP, look at it, map it to, you know, the new structure that you want to use, clean out those old records. So what could be migrated? Anything could be migrated, but we recommend your chart of accounts, cleaned and streamlined if you'd like, your customer master records, Open AR, your vendor master records, Open AP, your inventory master records, which could of course include BOMs, your inventory ledger balances, this would be your quantity on hand by location, your open sales orders and your open purchase orders, and then 2 years of summary general ledger history by account. So essentially we load in a beginning balance as of a certain date, historical date, and then we bring in net changes by month. This is typically what we do, but again, I just want to point out that we can bring over any data that needs to be migrated. So how can you get started with a GP to BC migration? You can schedule a discovery session to determine high-level needs. So that's just a great time to ask a few questions, let us ask a few questions, and determine what you want to do, what your pain points are, what your future state looks like, any objectives you have for growth, just all the things that would help us determine what is a good fit for your next step. You can request a pro forma budget to get an idea of, based on your scope and your timeline and your resources, what does that look like in terms of cost. there's so much information available to find on Business Central. You can also see a demonstration of it, of course, that's tailored to specifically what you're looking to see. And then decide when you're ready. So that would mean that your team is willing to learn a new software interface, that you're ready to move to the cloud, that you're excited maybe even about those new features and functionality, things that you've been needing or that you know will be easier to accomplish in Business Central, and that you're willing to consider that some of your processes may need to be changed to resolve pain points. And we take everything from an out-of-the-box focus, looking for ways to use the system to complete your processes. So we're always going to start there instead of trying to customize something. We're going to start with maybe we need to make a process change to resolve this issue or make this more efficient. And so that's something you want to be willing to do and when you're ready to move to Business Central. And then it's just a matter of scheduling it and starting it. Okay, I don't know how I'm doing on time, but that is my last slide, and would be very happy to take any questions that you have.
Thanks, Ann. Yeah, we're doing great on time. So if anyone wants to enter any questions in the chat, then this would be a great time to do so. If not, I believe, Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, we will be taking a 10-minute break to give everyone some time to stretch their legs a little bit, check their emails. Yeah. Looking at the chat box. Nothing yet, but sometimes it takes a few moments to get their questions entered, so we'll give them a couple more minutes.
If we do have a couple minutes, one thing I thought I might do is, are you still able to see my screen? I just switched over to a different one. Okay, so
Sure.
the Business Central homepage. I showed a little screenshot of this, but this is it actually live. I mentioned this before, but there's so much to see. But I kind of wanted you to get a quick view of what Business Central looks like and feels like. A really important part of Business Central is this global search where I can find anything that I want to see. If I look for roles, for example, I can see all the different roles that come out of the box that allow me to select what my home screen is going to look like. If I want to look at just manufacturing type tiles on my screen and reporting on my screen, I can do that. If I want to see just reports, I can change to one of the sections that's just for reporting. And that's a really nice way to very quickly personalize what your homepage looks like. In this case, I'm the business manager, so I have access to all of my tiles on here pertain to ongoing sales, purchases, and payments. You can see I have quick access up here to any sort of sales or purchasing activity. I have tiles that allow me to participate in approval workflows, and I have some self-service tabs where I can access my timesheet and enter my time. If I have any rejected timesheets, I can go in here and look at them. Down here, I can associate my favorite accounts and see at a glance what my balance is in those accounts. I can even drill down into them and see the transactions that make that up. I created a dashboard here that is an interactive trial balance. I can change the date filter. And down here, I can even add my favorite reports and set them up to output via email to a certain group of people every Friday if I wanted to. So just a quick look at the screen and the way that you move around in here, because it is different than GP. It's a different user experience, but it has I think a very easy to use user interface.
And I'll ask a question here real quick. Can I access the Business Central tenant from anywhere, or do I have to be like connected to my company's network?
You can access it from anywhere that you have internet access.
Okay.
Yep, it's just a URL, and you just go to that and log in through your Office 365 login.
Oh, interesting. Very, very mobile solution. Zach, any other questions coming? Otherwise, we're right at that 30-minute mark now.
Looks like we had another question come in. Does the this might be referred to an earlier portion in the presentation? Does the manufacturing portion expand on what is available in GP?
Yes, I am not really familiar with the GP manufacturing solution. I know the bones of it, and I know that Business Central is a full manufacturing solution. It is geared toward discrete manufacturers. It can also be adapted for process manufacturers. It has really all of the components to manufacturing that you would expect. So you are able to set up multi-level BOMs, either standard or on the fly. You're able to use standard costing. You have production orders and the ability on those production orders to capture all of your costs, whether that be machine, employee, labor, and materials. You can have routings that are set up to be moving the production process through your floor, and you have full planning capabilities as well. Capacity resource planning and manufacturing production planning are all part of the core functionality in the manufacturing module for Business Central.
Perfect. And then I have another question here. It looks like it's about the payroll module. What are the options for ISV payroll, and what would those costs be?
So we typically see most of our customers using an outside payroll service and just bringing in importing in a file on a journal entry on a regular basis. However, there are also ISVs like Integrity Data who have a payroll module that is embedded so that you are within Business Central and using the payroll module. What you saw here on my screen was the timesheets here. They're in project accounting in Business Central. There is also the capability to enter timesheets, but you would need an ISV solution to actually pay the employees and keep track of employee management. And that's where products like Integrity Data come in. And there are actually many products. Integrity Data is just the one that I've worked with most frequently. As far as cost goes, that's really going to vary because it's based on the number of employees, the different types of filings and deductions, there's many rules that are around that. But typically what Integrity Data will do is meet with you, ask a few pointed questions, and they'll be able to really quickly tell you what their costs would be.